What does it mean to truly belong? One of our viewers asked us if we'd explore that question. She lives in an inner city and meets people every day who are asking and searching for the answer to that question. We thought it would be a great one because it's something we all deal with all the time.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us for this. I think it's a really important topic. And in fact, I think it was Brene Brown who said that in the absence of love and belonging, there's only suffering. And
Very
if
true.
we think about it in those terms, that's a pretty harsh assessment, but a pretty accurate one too. But I'm also thinking that if that is the case, then the inverse should also be the case.
Yeah.
Meaning, if we can promote love and a sense of place and welcome, then we can also alleviate suffering and ultimately promote joy. So how good is that?
Yeah.
So let's get into that. So anybody who's studied even basic psychology 101 will have obviously come across Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And in that theory, our most primal needs are the ones we meet first, obviously, the need for food, for water, for shelter.
Yeah.
And interestingly, in the center of his pyramid, moving upwards, are the need to belong and to be loved. And you cannot progress to your fulfillment, is the argument, to your self-actualization, until you've come to a place of belonging. So that's pretty profound that, right after we meet our basic needs for safety, for shelter, for food, clothing, all that sort of stuff, then the next thing that we're looking for is that sense of home, of belonging. And how do we find that in today's world?
Let's talk first about belonging to place. And I think we all know what it's like to walk into a room that is unfamiliar. So first day of school, first day of university, somebody's house that we don't know the people very well, or for us moving to a new country. Those feelings make us feel very insecure.
Sure, very vulnerable.
Very vulnerable, and that is one of the ways where our belongingness is exposed or not. And a smile can break that ice, a handshake, or come join us, or sit by me. Those little phrases that
Absolutely.
we just are begging somebody to.
It's like we're looking for that one person who's going to cut through that.
Yes, yeah.
And you've had that experience even here on our land where an indigenous friend came and introduced you to aspects of the country that were foreign to you before, but helped make it familiar and welcoming.
I remember distinctly walking on country with a dear friend, and she said to me, you can feel the land, you can feel it healing. And I was unfamiliar with that idea. When we came here, the land was worn out and dry and starving.
And very different from where we'd come from.
Completely different from where we'd come from. And you're just hoping for somebody to make you feel like you're connected.
So there's a big role that we can play for each other when somebody comes into our new environment to make them feel at home. And we'll get to this in a second, but that can also be in a place of work. It's not necessarily just about landscape. It's literally any physical place. Like you said, we all know how it feels to walk into a room and be a fish out of water. If a fish out of water can be in a room.
Yeah, we get it.
I was reminded, thinking of this, about a line from Robert Frost's well-loved poem, "The Death of the Hired Hand."
Yes, yeah.
Because he has this haunting line in there where he describes, ironically, home, in the words of the husband in the story, as a place where when you have to go there, they have to take you in. And his wife says this in reply to that I should have called it something you somehow haven't to deserve, which is, a fragile way of saying nobody should have to feel that they need to deserve to have a home, or that sense of belonging to place. It should be innate.
Yes.
Everybody deserves that.
Yeah.
And if you think about the plight of refugees around the world, it breaks your heart thinking of how many people have been uprooted, have had that sense of home destroyed. So all the more when we get opportunities in our day-to-day lives to build that with people, it's so empowering that we do it.
Well, and to make the stranger welcome, I can't even imagine. We came here under great circumstances, and it was challenging to adjust. But I can't imagine, like a refugee background, coming from a place that you love that has been torn apart, and you're in a brand new circumstance, and because of the way you look, or how you worship, or how you live, or even your association, you're not wanted, and that sense of belonging is so important to sense of self, to sense of worth, and love, I think, and connection and belonging are really important. The next point we want to talk about is belonging to each other and how we value one another and make people feel like they belong. And Brene Brown, once again, says the opposite of belonging is just fitting in. And I think
That's a huge idea.
it is a huge idea.
Because if we're fitting in, that means we're adapting to what other people
Yeah.
want us to be like. Whereas if we belong, we're just ourselves.
And
We're-
it's
we're us.
unconditional love.
Yeah.
It's grace. It's love for
Yeah.
for. And I love that line from Jerry Maguire when Dorothy says,
I love him.
"Yeah, I love him for the man he wants to be. I love him for the man he almost is."
Always like, yeah, all good.
Right?
Well, okay,
Yeah.
great. So let's continue movie reference for a
Yes.
bit because I want to talk about Forrest Gump.
Okay.
Number one, because Forrest Gump is one of my all-time favorite films. But I think Forrest is a great character. Obviously, the movie itself is a love story to America, right? Taking us
Yeah.
through the history.
It's a journey.
It's
Yeah.
a journey.
Yeah.
But it's also a great reminder. It's a great illustration of belonging. So you have this
Yes.
child who has a disability. He's got disadvantages. So he gets harassed and teased and bullied as a kid. But then he befriends Jenny, or Jenny befriends him. You can sit here if you want,
Yeah.
right? On the bus,
Yeah.
okay? And then
Yeah.
they become friends. They didn't even know they needed each other, but they did. So they validated each other and created
Yeah.
that sense of belonging. Forrest grows up, he moves on, goes to Vietnam. Bubba, who can forget Bubba? And what a friendship, what a brotherly bond those two
Yeah.
share. And then
Yeah.
Lieutenant Dan,
Yeah. Yeah.
and everything that transpires. So,
Yeah.
massive illustrations throughout that movie
Yeah.
of people that wouldn't ordinarily be associated with each other, coming together and finding real belonging, finding family. And I'm sorry, I also just love the scenes where he's sitting on the bench waiting for the bus to arrive, and this revolving door of
Yeah.
people, come and sit beside him. It's like he's this immovable object, and the forces of time are coming and going and bringing these people to him. And each of them a stranger, but each of them he takes into his heart. He shares his story. It's just a matter of course that they would be there right now for that moment.
Right.
So.
And I tell my students that the whole time. I tell them, because they'll say, well, I don't like so-and-so, or I don't know them. And I'll say, well, you're missing out on the potential of this person who's come into your life for whatever reason, because there's so much about them that you don't know than you can learn from somebody that's completely different than you. So I think if we look for, especially the people who are, it's clear they're misfits, they don't have friends, they're new to a place, they're awkward, they don't have things that make them either any kind of attribute that make them desirable, to welcome them and help them feel like they belong, because I think belonging is so important to thriving.
Yeah, so we're affirming every person's intrinsic worth.
Yeah.
And that's what Forrest Gump can teach us.
Yeah.
Besides that life is like a box of chocolates. Okay, I'm going to stop now.
I know.
Actually, not. We're going to do one more movie reference. Because,
Yeah.
The Help.
You were smart.
Aibileen Clark.
Yeah,
Say
that's
it, girl.
right. You were smart, you were kind, and you were beautiful.
And that mantra that she tells
Yeah.
poor old May Mobley.
May Mobley, yeah.
That little
Yeah.
white kid sitting on the black nanny's lap, and just having these times together where she's just reinforcing everything that the kid's parents ought to be saying to her, but they're not. So you have a rich kid whose parents treat her like she's non-existent, or worse, they're cruel to her. And that dear lady reinforcing to her, you're smart, you're kind, you're important. And we don't all get chances to speak in mantras to each other, but we can convey that same thing, right?
Well, I've had a mantra for the boys when they were younger and leaving for school. I would say, for years, as I kissed them goodbye and I love you, I'd say, be humble and kind. And I added, after, middle school hit, I added, and brave. And I think bravery is required when we are making people feel welcome and at home, because it often takes that first act
That's a
of
great
kindness
point.
to step out and make someone
And
feel
we're making,
welcome.
we may be making ourselves vulnerable to ridicule.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
Tim McGraw, there's another verse for you: humble and kind and brave.
Yeah.
Which all of this brings us around to our last point.
Yeah.
So lastly, friends, we want to talk about belonging to God. And we've saved this as our final point because it's the most fantastic one. Certainly we as people of faith feel the affirmation of our belonging to God every day. And we get that most through our interactions with other people, frankly, irregardless of whether they share our faith.
Yeah.
If you look at Scripture, it's there throughout history. We belong to God. Isaiah tells us, God says, I have called you by name, you are mine.
The Psalms
talk about we are God's children, the sheep of his pasture. You know, time and again, Jesus affirmed it throughout his ministry.
Yeah.
He came here because each of us belongs to God. And we totally get it that for many people, there's very little in life that would lead them to that conclusion.
Well, and even for those of us of faith, there are many times in our lives where we're in a wilderness or taking a scenic route, and we need to, through prayer, through other people, be reminded over and over again that each one of us are loved sons and daughters of God.
So just because circumstances may be screaming the exact opposite at us, doesn't make it less true.
Yeah.
And so all the more, if you have faith, if you share our faith, you know who in your life is at a low ebb. Get alongside that person. Remind them through your actions, your words if necessary, that each of us belongs to God, that we are his children, and that we ultimately have a home with him to look forward to.
And to go along with what Chris said, I would just emphasize that belonging and helping people feel that they belong is about coming alongside them during the worst part of their lives, getting there in the trenches with them and supporting them through whatever trial they're going through at the moment.
Yeah. So, guys, apologies for the preach. Trust me, we're talking to ourselves here. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
So all of these things are areas where we have choices to make each day, and let's make the choices that help others feel that they belong. Whether that's to place, whether that's to a group of people in your workplace, in your communities, and ultimately, let's encourage each other that we each belong to God, and nothing is going to take that away from us ever. So thanks for your company, guys. And if this video has been an encouragement to you, please drop a comment. We really enjoy hearing from you. Thank you for subscribing. We look forward to more conversations coming up real soon. Have a great rest of your day.
Talk soon. Thank you.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.